roots of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict trace back to the early 1990s when the Soviet Union collapsed. Understanding Russia's geopolitical motivations, economic interests, and strategic concerns reveals why Vladimir Putin ultimately decided to launch the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. This comprehensive explanation explores key historical events, strategic motivations, and my views on how this can be stopped. When the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991 under President Boris Yeltsin, it left 15 newly independent republics, including Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. For centuries, these regions had been part of the Russian Empire and later the Soviet Union, sharing cultural, historical, and economic ties. The North European plain, a vast, flat stretch of land, has historically been difficult for Russia to defend. During the Cold War, Moscow dominated this plain, controlling Eastern Europe through the Warsaw Pact. This created a powerful defensive buffer against Western powers. With the collapse of the USSR, Russia lost control over its key defensive buffer zone as former Warsaw Pact states like Poland, Hungary, and Romania joined NATO. The shift placed NATO forces dangerously close to Russia's western border, leaving Moscow feeling encircled. Energy played a crucial role in the conflict as Russia sought to maintain dominance in the European gas market. Russia is the world's second-largest oil producer and possesses the largest natural gas reserves globally. Europe relies heavily on Russian gas, with nations like Germany importing over 50% of their natural gas from Russia. Ukraine's pipelines historically transported 80% of Russia's gas exports to Europe, making Ukraine a critical choke point. In 2012, Ukraine discovered vast shale gas reserves in Donetsk, Kharkiv, and offshore around Crimea. Ukraine partnered with Shell and Exxon to explore these resources, threatening Russia's dominance in European energy markets. If Ukraine became a gas-exporting power, it would undermine Russia's economic leverage over Europe and challenge Russia's key revenue source. The Crimean Peninsula became central to this struggle due to its strategic position in the Black Sea and offshore energy reserves. By annexing Crimea in 2014, Russia seized control of 80% of Ukraine's Black Sea energy resources, crippling Ukraine's future potential as an energy power. In 2013, Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, a pro-Russian leader, rejected an EU trade deal under pressure from Moscow. This decision triggered mass protests known as the Euromaidan Revolution. Pro-Western protesters ousted Yanukovych in February 2014, which alarmed Moscow. Russia responded by invading Crimea under the guise of protecting ethnic Russians when Barack Obama was the U.S. president. Following Crimea's annexation, Moscow supported pro-Russian separatists in Donetsk and Luhansk, triggering a war in eastern Ukraine. The U.S. condemned Russia's annexation of Crimea and provided Ukraine with non-lethal military aid, including body armor and communications equipment. Economic sanctions were imposed on Russia, targeting its energy sector and oligarchs close to Putin, but that wasn't enough. Russia aimed to undermine Ukraine's economy by perpetuating instability in Donbass while ensuring Ukraine could not extract its energy resources. Russia expanded its energy export infrastructure with projects like Nord Stream 2, bypassing Ukraine to deliver gas directly to Germany. After annexing Crimea, Russia faced a water shortage crisis. Ukraine blocked the North Crimean Canal, which had supplied 85% of Crimea's freshwater. This forced Moscow to invest billions in infrastructure to sustain Crimea's population and military presence. Putin's decision to invade Ukraine in February 2022 was influenced by several key concerns. Putin feared that a Western-oriented Ukraine would invite NATO closer to Russian borders. A NATO-aligned Ukraine could potentially position Western military bases along the Dnipro River, posing a strategic threat. By annexing Crimea and controlling eastern Ukraine, Russia sought to secure its Black Sea energy dominance, prevent Ukraine from developing its shale gas resources with Western companies. Russia's declining population is another factor. With fewer conscripts available in the future, Moscow may have seen 2022 as the best time to act while military capacity remained high. Putin's regime relies heavily on energy revenues to maintain internal stability. Ukraine's integration with the West threatened to undermine Russia's influence in Eastern Europe. But what is Putin's overall strategy here? Restore Russian dominance by reversing NATO's eastern expansion. Secure control over Ukraine's energy resources to maintain economic leverage. Ensure Crimea remains in Russian hands for its strategic military port in Sevastopol. Create a buffer zone between NATO and Russian territory. Here are my views on how this can be brought to a permanent end. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is a multifaceted struggle involving geopolitical security, energy dominance, and regional influence. Putin's invasion was driven by a combination of strategic paranoia, economic fears, and a desire to restore Russia's power in Eastern Europe. How can the US and other countries support to end the war? Keep funding Ukraine might not be the solution. For the other countries to stop Russia's aggression towards other countries, there needs to be a unified Western response in the form of develop targeted campaigns that expose Russian aggression and reveal the consequences for Russian citizens. Use cultural and diplomatic channels to isolate Russia politically. Invest heavily in protecting critical infrastructure from Russian-backed cyber attacks. Use cyber strategies to disrupt Russian misinformation campaigns. Counter Russian propaganda by supporting truthful journalism in targeted regions. Strengthen grassroots movements and democratic institutions to limit Russia's influence. Maintain open lines of communication to avoid misunderstandings and escalate tensions. Engage China, India, and other global players to pressure Russia diplomatically. Impose sanctions on key industries, energy, banking, and individuals in Russia's political and military elite. Reduce Europe's reliance on Russian energy to weaken Moscow's economic leverage. Continue targeting oligarchs and high-profile figures linked to the Kremlin. Putin has been attempting to exploit the lack of intervention from other influential leaders, seeking opportunities to expand Russia's influence through aggressive tactics. This behavior reflects a pattern of intimidation toward neighboring nations. With the United States now demonstrating stronger leadership, there's hope that peace can be brokered between Russia and Ukraine. However, the international community must collaborate to implement safeguards that prevent future acts of aggression and territorial encroachment. I'm sincerely hoping the deserving peace for Ukraine can be secured very soon. After all, they have suffered too much. I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you want more deep dives on some of the biggest issues we are facing, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thank you,